Welcome to ETF Edge, your go-to place for all things exchange-traded funds. I'm Leslie Picker, in for Dominic Chu today. We're seeing a confluence of enthusiasm in IPOs, in crypto, and ETFs in general this summer. Joining me now is Matthew Kennedy, senior strategist at Renaissance Capital, along with Nathan Geraci, president of Nova Diaz Wealth Management. Matt, thank you. Geraci, Matt, let's start with the IPO market. After a relative dormancy, it seems like companies and investors are really jumping in on this window of perceived opportunity. How long do you think we'll expect that window to remain open? Is this going to be reminiscent of the 2020, 2021 timeframe?
I don't think we can count on it going back to that level, but I might liken it to actually 2014 to 2017 or 18 or 19. We had this rebound following the great financial crisis. So I don't think we're going to go back to 2021 crazy levels, but I do think we see a possibility of just a return to normalcy, which is actually going to feel like a very busy market after the last 3 years.
Yeah, we've certainly seen that pipeline build up over the past few years, as you mentioned. Nate, the ETF industry has become very effective at kind of rapidly deploying new products to capitalize on different trends. Do you think we'll see competitors to the Renaissance Fund? It's been kind of the dominant play there for quite some time.
It's certainly possible. I think it depends on if we continue to see this enthusiasm over IPOs. You know, it's interesting. If you look since the April 8th market low, the Renaissance IPO ETF is up over 50% versus about 29% on the S&P 500. And to me, that's really reflective of the broader risk-on sentiment we've seen in the markets over this time period. And I think what you see is when animal spirits are high, that's typically good for IPOs. And if IPOs are doing well, you may have some potential competitors enter the space on the ETF side. The other aspect that I would mention here is that there have been some highly noteworthy IPOs this year. When you think about companies like Circle, that's up big since it went public in June. CoreWeave has had huge gains. And I think when you have companies coming to market that are in areas that already have a lot of investor interest, areas such as crypto and AI, that's certainly going to help as well. But we'll see if anybody wants to jump in and compete with the Renaissance IPO ETF.
Yeah, it really feels like, for the most part, maybe setting aside Circle, that a lot of the IPOs are really B2B. They're not necessarily consumer names, which often portend kind of big IPO cycles. Matt, do you think that trend continues, or what are some of the next big IPOs that you think should be on investors' radars?
Right. So I think we're seeing Klarna coming in the fall. That's been delayed a few times, but they seem pretty definitive about that. And I know Nate was mentioning in the crypto space, we do see several names there as well. We've got Bullish this week. And beyond that, Grayscale Investments, Gemini, Kraken rumored, maybe Ripple. There's several names here that we are watching out for. Just in these hot areas, they're seeing a lot of interest. Nate mentioned Circle, so that can provide a lot of fuel for the fire.
Yeah. So speaking of crypto, Nate, similar to the push to market we're seeing in IPOs, you're seeing a lot of what you call a boatload of crypto ETF filings. What does that mean, and how does that differ from what we've seen in the past?
Well, it's interesting because the three major stock exchanges, so NYSE, NASDAQ, and CBOE, they have all filed with the SEC for generic listing standards for crypto ETFs, which basically means that the exchanges wouldn't need to seek specific approval for each spot crypto ETF as long as it meets certain criteria. So this would streamline the approval process. And that's important because right now there are filings out there from multiple issuers for XRP ETFs, Solana ETFs, Cardano, HBAR. We could go on down the list, but there are a boatload of filings out there. And the expectation is that this standardized crypto framework will be implemented, say, in the next 2 months or so. And so if and when that happens, I think you're going to see the floodgates open. We're going to see a wave of approvals, and you're going to see, again, a boatload of new crypto ETFs coming to market.
Yeah, that certainly seems like a big catalyst there. Matt, do you think we'll see more crypto-related IPOs similar to Circle, especially around stablecoins? Do you think we'll see some SPAC-related IPOs that have that kind of crypto focus?
Sure. I mean, there's a saying on Wall Street, when the ducks are quacking, feed them. So, of course, Circle really accelerated the timeline of a lot of these crypto companies that have been waiting for the right time to go public. You bring up SPACs. We've seen a lot of SPAC activity, specifically targeting crypto treasury companies. But I will mention that with Bullish this week, it might be flying under the radar, but Bullish has a lot of crypto assets. So it's not really a crypto treasury company, but I mean, it's sitting on 2 billion plus of crypto assets. So we are seeing some activity there.
Wow, yeah, no small number. Nate, how have crypto fund flows been looking? Does that to you symbolize just the overall demand for crypto right now? And if they get kind of the institutional support, as you mentioned, with regard to the NYSE and NASDAQ, do you think that will help support additional ETF creation?
I do. It's been a monster year for inflows into spot crypto ETFs. About $26 billion has gone into spot crypto ETFs overall this year, about 19 billion into spot Bitcoin ETFs, another 7 billion into spot Ether ETFs. And if you look in July alone, investors put about 6 billion into spot Bitcoin ETFs and 5.5 billion into spot Ether ETFs. And if you look at spot Ether ETFs in particular, interest has certainly picked up recently. So 8 of the top 10 inflow days since this category debuted back in July of last year have happened in the past month, including all 5 of the top days since launch. And Leslie, I just think the main story here is there is a very strong regulatory tailwind behind the space right now. When you think of things like the Genius Act, which was recently signed into law, so that's stablecoin legislation. The House recently passed the Clarity Act, which is a digital asset market structure bill that will now go to the Senate. The SEC unveiled Project Crypto, and we actually had SEC Chair Paul Atkins. He was talking about bringing financial markets on chain. And so I could keep going. I mean, the SEC approved in-kind creations and redemptions for spot Bitcoin and Ether ETFs. They clarified their stance on liquidity staking tokens. There has just been a lot of positive movement on the crypto regulatory front. And I think that's giving investors, especially institutional investors and advisors, much more comfortability in allocating to the space. So I think the trend moving forward is certainly higher as it pertains to interest in these products.
Yeah, that's something a lot of crypto enthusiasts have been calling for a while, this idea of give us the regulatory rules of the road so we can get more institutional investors comfortable with the concept. Let's continue the conversation on fund flows. Nate, ETFs still on pace for yet another record year following a big July of inflows?
Yeah, so over $700 billion has flowed into ETFs overall this year, including around 120 billion in July, which was the highest monthly total this year. And so right now we're on pace for somewhere in the neighborhood of, say, 1.2 to 1.3 trillion dollars in inflows, which would break last year's record of 1.1 trillion. And it's worth mentioning that historically, if you look, the fourth quarter of the year is the strongest for ETF inflows. And so it's certainly possible we could see some acceleration from here. And if you drill down just a little bit further, about 360 billion has gone into equity ETFs. There's been another 230 billion into fixed income ETFs. And then the remainder is spread across things like crypto ETFs, buffer ETFs, et cetera. There are a lot of categories benefiting. And I just think we're at the point now where if investors want to express a particular view on the financial markets, any view that they might have, they can now do it using ETFs, right? If they want active management, ETFs have it. If they want crypto, they can access that through ETFs. Hedge fund strategies, option strategies, it's all available in an ETF wrapper now. And so I think, it's been a pretty good year in the markets. We've had the bounce since the April low, but I think regardless of what the broader markets are doing, there's now a place for ETF investors to go to express their views. So yeah, it's been a great year so far.
Yeah, express their views long or short. If they want to use it as a hedging option or to kind of express a certain factor or a segment of the market, to your point. Matt, where are you seeing the money flow in the pre-IPO phase for private companies? So, in other words, what's the next big innovation bet that could impact the markets more broadly in the long term?
I mean, the obvious answer is AI. I think a company just has to, bring out its hat and then get $1 billion in that space is just crazy. So we do see that leading. I mean, it's a good thing in the long run. It'll lead to IPOs maybe by the end of the decade, 2028, 2029, we might get an OpenAI IPO. But it is more than just those big names. I think we're seeing a lot of companies that are going public that people don't even realize are AI companies. Heartflow last week, for example. So and not just these LLMs, but there's companies that are integrating AI into all of their solution throughout the tech stack. Figma, another perfect example of that. So, a lot of fund flows going into AI, and I think we'll eventually and are currently seeing the IPO results of that.
Yeah, I was told that kind of one of the reasons that we had such a big pipeline buildup was there were a whole slew of companies that needed to get their AI story straight before even going public. Companies you wouldn't think about, from an AI context, but when they were going to be on the roadshow, they were going to be asked about it by investors. And so they had to get their story straight for what they're going to say. Are you using AI? You're going to be disintermediated by AI. So that's a key component of pretty much any company looking to IPO right now as well. My many thanks to Matt and Nate for joining us today. Great stuff. Remember, you can catch all of our other content at etfedge.cnbc.com. Thank you very much for watching.
Get the ABCs of ETFs with the ETF Edge newsletter. Your weekly update on the hottest trends, expert analysis, actionable ideas, and exclusive insight from top industry experts. Sign up now at cnbc.com/ETF Edge newsletter.